Bus driver humiliates autistic girl daily, until her dad confronts him. The bus door screeched open, the sound jarring against the morning calm. Little Lily hesitated at the bottom step, clutching her purple backpack tightly. Her eyes darted around nervously, taking in the towering figure of the bus driver, Mr. Carter. His uniform was crisp, but his expression was anything but welcoming. "You're late." "Again," Mr. Carter barked, his voice sharp and unforgiving. His finger jabbed toward the digital clock on the dashboard. "You see that? 7:03. The bus leaves at 7 sharp." I'm sorry," Lily stammered, her words barely audible. She avoided his gaze, her small frame trembling under the weight of his glare. Mr. Carter scoffed loudly, ensuring the entire bus heard him. "Sorry doesn't cut it, kid. You're holding everyone up." He gestured dramatically toward the rows of students, most of whom were staring at Lily with expressions that ranged from pity to barely concealed amusement. Lily's cheeks flushed crimson, and she clutched her backpack even tighter. She hurried up the steps, her feet barely making a sound. Mr. Carter muttered something under his breath, shaking his head as he slammed the door shut and pressed on the gas. Lily shuffled toward the back of the bus, her head down. The whispers started almost immediately. "Why doesn't she just take a different bus?" one boy snickered. "She's so weird," another girl murmured, loud enough for Lily to hear. Lily sank into an empty seat near the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. She closed her eyes and tried to drown out the noise, but the lump in her throat refused to go away. The bus rumbled on, the tires hitting every bump in the road as if mocking her with each jolt. At home, her father, Daniel, was finishing his second cup of coffee when Lily walked through the door after school. He glanced up from his laptop, his smile fading as he noticed the defeated slump in her shoulders. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel said gently, setting his mug aside. "How was school?" Lily shrugged, dropping her backpack by the door. "It was okay," she mumbled, her voice devoid of its usual cheer. Daniel frowned. He had learned to read between the lines with Lily. Her autism meant that words often came second to emotions, and right now, those emotions were painted all over her face. "Lily," he said softly, kneeling down to her level. "What happened?" She hesitated, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. "Nothing, just the bus." "The bus?" Daniel pressed, his tone calm but insistent. "Did something happen on the bus?" Lily's eyes welled with tears, but she shook her head, refusing to say more. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't the first time she'd come home looking like this, and he was beginning to piece together a troubling picture. The next morning, Daniel decided to drive Lily to the bus stop and wait with her. He stood a few feet away, watching as she fidgeted nervously with her hands, her eyes darting toward the corner where the bus would appear. When it finally arrived, the doors opened with their usual screech, and there he was, Mr. Carter, his expression already sour. "Come on, kid, move it," Mr. Carter snapped, his tone impatient as Lily hesitated on the steps. Daniel's jaw tightened as he watched. He took a step forward, but Lily turned back to him, her eyes pleading. "It's okay, Daddy. I'll be fine." Daniel nodded reluctantly, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "All right, sweetheart. Have a good day." He watched the bus pull away, his heart heavy with unease. Something wasn't right, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. Later that evening, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his laptop. He searched for information about the school bus system, looking for contact numbers or policies about driver behavior. He found a hotline for complaints and made a note of it, his frustration mounting. When Lily came into the kitchen for a glass of water, he decided to broach the subject again. "Lily," he said gently, "can you tell me more about the bus driver? Mr. Carter, right?" Lily froze, her hand gripping the glass. "I don't want to talk about him," she said quickly. "Why not?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but firm. "You can tell me anything, sweetheart. You know that." She hesitated, her shoulders hunching as if trying to make herself smaller. "He doesn't like me," she said finally. "Why do you think that?" Daniel asked, his chest tightening. Lily shrugged. "He always yells at me. He says I'm slow. And sometimes he laughs when the other kids say mean things." Daniel's blood boiled. but he forced himself to stay composed for Lily's sake. "Does he say mean things to you?" She nodded reluctantly. "He says I shouldn't ride the bus if I can't get on fast enough. He says I'm wasting everyone's time." Daniel took a deep breath, his hands clenching into fists under the table. "Thank you for telling me, Lily," he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "I promise I'll take care of this." The next morning, Daniel decided to follow the bus in his car. He kept a safe distance, watching as it stopped to pick up more children. At each stop, he noticed Mr. Carter's demeanor, the sharp tone, the impatient gestures. But it wasn't until Lily's stop that Daniel saw the full extent of it. Lily hesitated at the bottom step, just as she always did. Mr. Carter rolled his eyes dramatically, waving her on with exaggerated impatience. "Hurry up, kid. We don't have all day." Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He watched as Lily hurried onto the bus, her head down, and made her way to the back. Mr. Carter muttered something under his breath before slamming the door and pulling away. That was the final straw. That afternoon, Daniel was waiting at the bus stop when the bus pulled up. The doors opened, and Lily stepped off, her face lighting up when she saw her father. "Daddy," she called, running to him. But Daniel wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on Mr. Carter, who was glaring down from the driver's seat. "Mr. Carter," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. "I need a word with you." Mr. Carter raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "I'm busy." "Whatever it is, take it up with the school." Daniel stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I'm taking it up with you. You've been humiliating my daughter, and I won't stand for it." Mr. Carter scoffed, leaning back in his seat. "Humiliating? She's the one who holds everyone up every morning. Maybe she shouldn't ride the bus if she can't handle it." Daniel's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to stay calm. "My daughter has autism," he said evenly. "She processes things differently. But that doesn't give you the right to treat her like she's less than anyone else." Mr. Carter rolled his eyes. "Look, I don't have time for this. If she's such a problem, maybe you should drive her to school yourself." Daniel took a deep breath, his voice steady but filled with steel. "I will be filing a formal complaint about your behavior. And trust me, this isn't over." The bus pulled away with a groan of its engine, leaving Daniel standing at the stop with Lily by his side. He looked down at her, her small hand clutching his, and felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about one bad bus driver, it was about standing up for his daughter, for her dignity, and for every moment she'd endured in silence. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel made a call to the school district's transportation office. The voice on the other end was polite but dismissive, their tone indicating they'd heard complaints like this before. "We'll look into it, Mr. Matthews," the woman said vaguely. "But unless there's concrete evidence of misconduct, it's difficult to take action." Daniel clenched his jaw. "So, what you're telling me is, unless I record this man humiliating my daughter, you're not going to do anything?" "I'm not saying that, sir," the woman replied, her voice tight. "But we have protocols and we need to follow due process." "Fine," Daniel said, his voice cold. "I'll get you your evidence." He hung up the phone and sat back, his mind racing. He wasn't going to let this go. Lily deserved better, better than a system that allowed people like Mr. Carter to bully children without consequence. The next morning, Daniel equipped Lily with a small recording device tucked discreetly into her backpack. "This is just to help us, sweetheart," he explained gently. "If Mr. Carter says anything mean today, we'll have proof to make him stop." Lily nodded, her wide eyes filled with trust. "Okay, to Daddy." At the bus stop, Daniel crouched down to give her a hug. "You're so brave, Lily. I'm proud of you." When the bus arrived, Daniel stayed hidden behind his car, his phone recording the interaction. Sure enough, as Lily stepped onto the bus, Mr. Carter's voice boomed. "Late again, huh?" he sneered. "Why am I not surprised?" "Come on, slowpoke, you're holding everyone up." Daniel's blood boiled as he watched Lily hurry to her seat, her head down. He knew he had what he needed, but it didn't make watching it any easier. That evening, Daniel played the recordings for the school district's transportation office. This time, their tone was markedly different. "This is unacceptable," the supervisor said, her voice sharp with disapproval. We'll be launching a formal investigation into Mr. Carter's behavior immediately. Good, Daniel said, his voice firm. But I'm not stopping there. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to any other child. The supervisor hesitated. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to the school board, Daniel said. And I'm going to make sure they hear this. The following week, Daniel attended the school board meeting, standing before a panel of officials and an audience of concerned parents. He played the recordings for them, his voice steady as he explained the impact Mr. Carter's behavior had on his daughter. This isn't just about my child, he said, his gaze sweeping across the room. This is about every child who's ever been made to feel small, or different, or less than. We trust the school system to protect our kids, and it's time to hold people accountable. The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, parents nodding and whispering to each other. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly aware that this issue wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Days later, Daniel received a call from the transportation office. Mr. Matthews, the supervisor said, her tone more respectful than before, I wanted to inform you that Mr. Carter has been removed from his position. We've also implemented new training for all our drivers to ensure this doesn't happen again. Daniel felt a wave of relief, but it was tinged with lingering frustration. This is a step in the right direction, he said. But it shouldn't have taken this much to get here. I understand, the supervisor said, and I appreciate your persistence. It's because of parents like you that we can make these changes. The next morning, a new bus driver greeted Lily at the stop. She was a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Jenkins, whose warm smile immediately put Lily at ease. Good morning, Lily, Mrs. Jenkins said cheerfully. Welcome aboard. Lily hesitated for only a moment before stepping onto the bus. She turned back to Daniel and waved, her smile brighter than it had been in weeks. Daniel waved back, his heart swelling with pride. He had fought for his daughter, and he had won. Later that evening, as they sat together on the couch, Lily snuggled up to her father. Daddy, she said softly. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you, she whispered, for helping me. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Always, Lily. I'll always be here for you. And in that moment, he knew that every battle, every moment of frustration had been worth it. Because Lily deserved the world, and he would do whatever it took to give it to her. The days following Mr. Carter's removal felt like a fresh start for both Lily and Daniel. Each morning, Daniel would watch from his car as Lily confidently boarded the bus, greeted warmly by Mrs. Jenkins. The tension that had once clung to Lily like a shadow was gone, replaced by a lightness that made her seem more like the joyful child he knew. At dinner one evening, Lily surprised him by speaking up. Daddy, today Mrs. Jenkins let me sit in the front seat. She said I'm her helper now. Daniel smiled, his chest swelling with pride. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Did you like being her helper? Lily nodded vigorously. She said I have the best smile on the whole bus. That's because you do, Daniel said, reaching over to ruffle her hair. For the first time in what felt like forever, he saw Lily glowing with confidence, and it was a sight he would treasure. The following week, Daniel received an email from the school district inviting him to speak at a parent-teacher association meeting. The topic was bullying and inclusion, and they wanted him to share his experience. At first, Daniel hesitated. He wasn't a public speaker by any means, and the idea of standing in front of a crowd made his stomach churn. But then he thought about Lily, the way she had stood tall despite everything, and he knew he had to do it. The night of the meeting, Daniel stood in front of a packed room, his palms sweaty as he gripped the edges of the podium. He glanced at Lily, who was sitting in the front row with her favorite purple sweater, giving him a thumbs up. Her silent encouragement gave him the strength he needed. Good evening, everyone, Daniel began, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling under the surface. I'm here tonight because of my daughter, Lily. She's an amazing little girl, smart, kind, and full of creativity. But recently, she experienced something no child should ever have to go through. He went on to share their story, from the humiliation Lily endured at the hands of Mr. Carter to the steps he took to hold the system accountable. The room was silent, the audience hanging on to his every word. But this isn't just about my daughter, Daniel continued. This is about every child who's been made to feel different or less than because of who they are. It's about creating a world where kindness and understanding come first. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. We have the power to make that world a reality. It starts with teaching our kids to be empathetic and holding ourselves accountable when we fall short. And it starts with speaking up, even when it's hard. The room erupted into applause, the sound filling the auditorium. Daniel stepped back, his heart pounding, and looked down at Lily. She was clapping enthusiastically, her smile brighter than ever. In that moment, Daniel realized he had done more than stand up for his daughter. He had helped spark a conversation that could create lasting change. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began receiving emails and calls from other parents. Some thanked him for speaking out, while others shared their own stories of challenges their children faced. It was overwhelming at first, but Daniel quickly realized the importance of building a community of support. One parent, a woman named Sarah, reached out with a suggestion. "I run a local parent advocacy group for children with disabilities," she said. "We'd love to have you join us. Your story could really inspire others." Daniel agreed, and before long, he found himself immersed in the group's efforts. They organized workshops, fundraisers, and meetings with school officials, all aimed at promoting inclusion and understanding. Lily even got involved, helping to decorate flyers and sharing her artwork with the group. One day, as they were setting up for a community event, Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, do you think I could talk at the meeting too?" Daniel knelt down, his eyes searching hers. "You want to talk? What would you say?" Lily shrugged shyly. "I just want to tell people that it's okay to be different, and that being kind is important." Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. "I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart." At the next meeting, Lily stood on the small stage, clutching a microphone with both hands. She glanced nervously at Daniel, who gave her a reassuring nod from the audience. "Hi," she began, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Lily, and I want to tell you something." The room was silent, everyone leaning forward to hear her. "I used to feel scared on the bus. The driver wasn't nice to me, and it made me feel really small." She paused, taking a deep breath. "But my daddy helped me. He showed me that I'm not small, and that being kind is what matters the most." The audience erupted into applause, and Lily beamed, her confidence shining brighter than ever. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes as he watched her, his brave, beautiful daughter standing tall. As the months passed, life settled into a new normal. Lily continued to thrive, her confidence growing with each passing day. Daniel found a sense of purpose in his advocacy work, connecting with parents and children who had faced similar struggles. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily leaned against Daniel's shoulder. "Daddy," she said softly. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think Mr. Carter learned to be nicer?" Daniel thought for a moment. "I hope so," he said finally. "Sometimes people need to be reminded of what's important." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I hope he's nice to the other kids now." "I hope so too," Daniel said, wrapping an arm around her. "And if he's not, we'll make sure they know they can stand up for themselves. Just like we did." Lily smiled, her eyes shining with a wisdom far beyond her years. "We're a good team, huh, Daddy?" "The best," Daniel said, his voice filled with pride. As the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. They had faced challenges, but they had come out stronger. And together, he and Lily were unstoppable. Months turned into a year, and the changes sparked by Daniel's fight for Lily rippled through the school district. Drivers underwent sensitivity training, parents felt empowered to voice concerns, and students were encouraged to embrace inclusion and kindness. What had started as one father standing up for his daughter had grown into a movement, and Daniel often reflected on how far they had come. One crisp autumn morning, as Daniel packed Lily's lunch, she skipped into the kitchen, her purple sweater slightly too big but undeniably her favorite. She had a sparkle in her eyes that Daniel immediately recognized. "Daddy, guess what?" she said, bouncing on her toes. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, handing her a juice box. "Mrs. Jenkins said I can read my poem at the school assembly tomorrow. She said it's really good, and she wants everyone to hear it." Daniel's heart swelled with pride. That's amazing, Lily. Can I hear it? Lily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack and smoothed it out on the counter. Clearing her throat, she began. Sometimes people don't understand how different I feel, how I use my hands. But kindness is simple. It's in what we do. It's in how we see others, how we see you. Being kind doesn't cost a thing. It's in the joy that words can bring. So let's all try to see the light in every child to make things right. As she finished, she looked up at Daniel, her eyes bright with a mix of pride and nervousness. Do you like it? Daniel knelt down and pulled her into a hug. I love it, Lily. It's beautiful, just like you. The day of the assembly, Daniel sat in the audience, surrounded by other parents and teachers. The room buzzed with energy as students filed onto the stage, each taking their turn at the microphone. When it was finally Lily's turn, Daniel felt his heart leap into his throat. She stepped up to the microphone, clutching her poem in both hands. For a moment, she hesitated, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Daniel. He gave her an encouraging nod, and she straightened her shoulders. Hi, she said, her voice small but steady. My name is Lily, and this is my poem about kindness. As she read, the room fell silent, her words weaving a powerful message that resonated with everyone present. When she finished, the audience erupted into applause, and Daniel rose to his feet, clapping harder than anyone else. After the assembly, parents approached Daniel, some with tears in their eyes. One mother, whose son had been struggling with bullying, thanked him profusely. Your daughter is so brave, she said. And so are you. What you've done, it's inspired all of us. Daniel smiled, humbled by the kind words. It's Lily who's the brave one, he said. She's taught me more than I could ever teach her. As the weeks passed, Lily's poem became the centerpiece of the school's new kindness campaign. Posters with her words were hung in hallways, and teachers incorporated discussions about empathy into their lessons. For the first time, Lily felt truly seen and valued, not just for her differences, but for the unique perspective she brought to the world. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Daniel watched Lily work on a new drawing. Her confidence had grown so much since the days of Mr. Carter, and he marveled at how far she'd come. Daddy, she said suddenly, looking up from her paper, do you think we could write a book together? A book about kindness? Daniel blinked, caught off guard but immediately filled with pride. That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. What kind of book? A book for kids, Lily said, her excitement bubbling over. So they know it's okay to be different. And that being kind is the best thing you can be. Daniel smiled, his heart full. I think that's a brilliant idea. Let's do it. Over the next few months, Daniel and Lily worked on the book together. Lily created the illustrations, each one filled with vibrant colors and whimsical details, while Daniel helped her craft the words. The process was a labor of love, and every evening they spent at the kitchen table brought them closer together. When the book was finally finished, they self-published it with the help of the local advocacy group. The first copies sold out at a school fundraiser, and soon word spread to neighboring schools and communities. Before long, the book became a tool for teachers and parents to discuss kindness and inclusion with children. At the official book launch, held at the community center, Lily stood on stage beside Daniel, holding a copy of their book. She smiled shyly at the crowd, her confidence growing with each passing moment. Thank you for coming, she said into the microphone. I hope our book helps everyone remember to be kind. Because kindness is magic, and it can change the world. The crowd erupted into applause, and Daniel couldn't have been prouder. He knelt beside Lily, holding her hand as they took in the moment together. You did it, Lily, he whispered. You changed the world. Lily looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. We did it, Daddy. Together. In the months and years that followed, Daniel and Lily's book became a staple in schools across the district. Their story continued to inspire others, reminding everyone of the power of standing up for what's right and the incredible impact of kindness. And through it all, Daniel and Lily remained a team, stronger, braver, and more connected than ever. As they sat together on the porch one evening, watching the stars twinkle above, Lily leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. Daddy, she said softly, I'm really happy. Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. The success of the book was more than Daniel or Lily could have ever anticipated. What started as a personal project had blossomed into something far greater, a movement that reached beyond their small community. Teachers, counselors, and parents from neighboring towns began reaching out to Daniel, sharing how the book had sparked meaningful conversations in their homes and classrooms. One day, Daniel received a call from a national organization that focused on inclusion and advocacy for children with disabilities. The representative, a warm-voiced woman named Karen, explained that their group had come across the book and was deeply moved by its message. "We'd love to feature you and Lily at our annual conference," Karen said. "Your story could inspire families all across the country." Daniel hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was sitting on the floor sketching in her notebook. "That's very kind of you," he said. "But I'd need to talk to Lily about it first. I never want to push her into anything she's not comfortable with." "Of course," Karen said. "Take your time. We'll follow your lead." That evening, Daniel sat down with Lily and explained the invitation. She looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Will there be other kids like me there?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel said gently. "There will be lots of kids and parents too. And they'd love to hear your story." Lily was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. "But let's do it." The conference was held in a bustling city far from their quiet town. Lily was both nervous and excited as they arrived at the Grand Convention Center, its halls filled with people from all walks of life. The energy was electric, and Daniel couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed himself. When it was their turn to speak, Daniel and Lily walked onto the stage together, greeted by a room full of applause. Daniel started by sharing their journey, how one bus driver's behavior had led to a fight for change, and how that fight had inspired a book that was now making waves far beyond their community. "And through it all," Daniel said, his voice steady with emotion, "it was my daughter who showed me the true power of resilience and kindness. She's taught me more than I could have ever imagined, and I'm so proud to stand here with her today." He turned to Lily, who stepped forward, clutching the microphone with both hands. Her voice was soft but clear as she spoke. "Hi," she began, her eyes scanning the audience. "My name is Lily, and I just want to say that it's okay to be different. Being different makes us special. And when people are kind to each other, it makes the world a better place." The room erupted into applause, and Lily beamed, her confidence shining brighter than ever. As she and Daniel walked off the stage, countless parents and children approached them, sharing their own stories and thanking them for their courage. One little boy, no older than 7, tugged on Lily's sleeve. "I like your book," he said shyly. "It makes me feel brave." Lily smiled and handed him a small sketch she'd been working on. "You are brave," she said. "Don't forget that." The conference marked a turning point for both Daniel and Lily. They continued to travel, sharing their story and their book, but they always made sure to stay grounded in the life they'd built together. For Lily, each step forward was another victory, a testament to her strength and the support of her father. Back in their hometown, the changes in the school district continued to grow. A new bus driver program was introduced, focusing on empathy and inclusion. Posters featuring Lily's poem were displayed on every school bus, a constant reminder of the importance of kindness. One afternoon, as Daniel and Lily walked home from the library, they passed by one of the buses. Lily stopped and pointed to the window, where her poem was proudly displayed. "Look, Daddy," she said, her voice filled with pride. "That's mine." Daniel smiled, kneeling down beside her. "That's yours," he said. "And it's helping so many people." Lily tilted her head, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "Do you think Mr. Carter sees it too?" Daniel paused, considering her question. "Maybe," he said. "And maybe it's helping him too." Lily nodded, satisfied with that answer. "I hope he's kind now." "I hope so too," Daniel said, taking her hand. "But even if he's not, we know how to handle it. Right? Right?" Lily said confidently. "Because kindness is magic." Years later, when Lily was in high school, she came across an old copy of their book while cleaning out her room. She sat on the floor, flipping through the pages and smiling at the colorful illustrations she had drawn as a child. Her father walked in, pausing when he saw her with the book. going down memory lane?" Daniel asked, his voice warm. Lily nodded, holding up the book. "Do you remember when we made this?" "Of course," Daniel said, sitting beside her. "That book changed everything, for both of us." Lily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I think it's time to write another one." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "Really? What would it be about?" "About how kindness grows," Lily said thoughtfully. "How it starts small, but it can change the whole world." Daniel wrapped an arm around her, his heart full. "I think that's a wonderful idea." And so, their journey continued, one story at a time, each step a reminder of the incredible power of love, resilience, and the magic of kindness. The decision to write another book became a bonding project for Daniel and Lily, much like the first one. But this time, Lily took the lead. Now a teenager, her confidence had blossomed, and she had a clear vision for what she wanted to say. Their new book, The Ripple of Kindness, focused on how small acts of compassion could create lasting change, much like how Lily's poem and story had inspired so many. Lily poured her heart into the writing, weaving in her own experiences alongside the stories of others they had met during their journey. The book's illustrations, once childlike and colorful, now reflected her growth as an artist, more refined, yet still bursting with creativity and warmth. When the book was complete, they hosted a launch event at the same community center where their first book had debuted. The room was packed with familiar faces, teachers, parents, and even a few of Lily's classmates who had grown up watching her transform into a beacon of strength. As Lily stood on stage, holding a copy of the new book, she addressed the audience with the same quiet confidence that had become her trademark. "When I was little," she began, "I used to think that being different was something to hide. But now I know that being different is a gift. And kindness is what helps us share that gift with the world." She paused, scanning the room, her eyes locking with her father's. "This book is for anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. And it's for everyone who's helped someone else feel seen, loved, and valued. Because kindness isn't just something we do, it's who we are." The applause was thunderous, and Daniel couldn't help but feel a swell of pride so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. Watching Lily stand tall, speaking her truth, he knew they had created something truly special. In the weeks that followed, The Ripple of Kindness gained national attention. Schools, libraries, and advocacy groups embraced the book as a tool for teaching empathy and inclusion. Lily was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and even a few televised interviews, where her humility and wisdom captivated audiences. One morning, as Daniel sipped his coffee and scrolled through his emails, he noticed one that stood out. It was from someone he hadn't thought about in years, Mr. Carter. "Dear Daniel and Lily," the email began. "I don't know if you'll even want to hear from me, but I felt I needed to reach out. I've seen your story and your books, and I've been deeply moved by the work you've done. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my behavior back then, and I want you to know how sorry I am for the way I treated Lily. There's no excuse for my actions, but I've been working to be a better person. Your story has reminded me of the kind of person I want to be. Thank you for teaching me something I should have learned a long time ago. Kindness is everything." Daniel sat back, the weight of the email sinking in. When Lily walked into the kitchen a few moments later, he handed her the email to read. She scanned the words carefully, her expression thoughtful. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Daniel asked. Lily looked up at him, her eyes clear and calm. "I think people can change. And I think he's trying." Daniel nodded. "Do you want to respond?" Lily smiled softly. "Yes." Her response was simple but heartfelt. "Dear Mr. Carter, thank you for your message. It means a lot to know that our story has made a difference. Everyone makes mistakes, but what matters most is learning from them and choosing to be better. I hope you continue to spread kindness wherever you go. Sincerely, Lily." Life continued to evolve for Daniel and Lily. Their books became staples in schools across the country, and their advocacy efforts brought tangible change to their community and beyond. But through it all, they remained grounded in the small, everyday moments that defined their bond. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Daniel turned to Lily. "You know," he said, his voice warm, "all of this started with one moment. One decision to stand up for what was right? Lily nodded, her eyes thoughtful. And now it's a ripple? Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. A ripple that keeps growing. Thanks to you. Thanks to us, Lily corrected, leaning against him. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, father and daughter sat in peaceful silence, knowing that their story was far from over. Together, they had created something lasting, something that would continue to inspire kindness and courage in others for generations to come. And in the end, that was their greatest victory of all. The ripple of their story continued to spread in unexpected ways. As Lily's books gained traction nationwide, schools and organizations began inviting both Daniel and Lily to lead workshops about kindness, inclusion, and advocacy. What had once been a deeply personal fight to protect Lily had grown into a shared mission to create change for countless others. One invitation stood out among the rest. A school district in a neighboring state wanted Lily and Daniel to host an entire week dedicated to kindness. They called it the Kindness Campaign, and Lily's poem was set to be the centerpiece of the event. For the first time, Lily would take the lead in designing the activities and lessons. Sitting at the kitchen table one evening, Lily outlined her ideas while Daniel worked on logistics. We can have stations where kids write kindness notes to each other, Lily suggested, her voice animated. And maybe we can have a big mural where everyone adds their own piece to show how we're all connected. That's a great idea, Daniel said, smiling as he watched her. You've got a real talent for this. Lily grinned. Do you think the other kids will like it? I think they'll love it, Daniel said confidently. And even if some don't, the ones who need it most will feel the difference. That's what matters. When they arrived at the school district for the campaign kickoff, the sight that greeted them was overwhelming. Banners with Lily's poem hung in every hallway, and students wore pins that read, "Kindness is magic." Teachers and staff had gone above and beyond to create an atmosphere of positivity and encouragement. Lily's first task was to speak to an auditorium full of middle schoolers, a daunting challenge, but one she was determined to face. Daniel stood off to the side, giving her an encouraging nod as she approached the microphone. "Hi," she began, her voice steady but soft. "My name is Lily, and I want to tell you a little bit about my story." She spoke about her experiences on the bus, how it felt to be treated differently, and how her dad had stood up for her when she couldn't find the words. She explained how kindness had transformed her life and why it was so important to share that kindness with others. "There's a lot of power in being kind," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "Sometimes it's the smallest things, like smiling at someone or sitting with them at lunch, that can make the biggest difference. You never know how much someone might need that." The students erupted into applause, and Lily beamed, her confidence growing with every moment. Throughout the week, Daniel watched as Lily blossomed into a leader. She guided workshops, encouraged shy students to participate, and even helped mediate small disputes between kids who didn't quite understand the campaign's message at first. Her patience and empathy were inspiring, and Daniel couldn't have been prouder. On the final day of the campaign, the school held an outdoor assembly to unveil the mural Lily had envisioned. It was a massive piece of art, filled with handprints, drawings, and messages of kindness from every student and staff member. In the center was Lily's poem, surrounded by a rainbow of colors. As the crowd cheered, Lily stood beside Daniel, her eyes shining. "We did it, Daddy," she said softly. "You did it," Daniel corrected, his voice filled with pride. "You're changing the world, one step at a time." Back home, their efforts continued to gain recognition. A local news station invited them for an interview, and soon after, a national morning show reached out as well. Lily was nervous about being on TV, but Daniel reassured her. "Just be yourself," he said. "That's all anyone wants to see." During the interview, the host asked Lily what had inspired her to keep going even when things were hard. "My dad," she said without hesitation. "He taught me to be brave and to stand up for what's right. And he showed me that kindness can make everything better." Daniel blinked back tears as he watched her speak, amazed at how far she had come. The little girl who used to shrink under the weight of the world was now a young woman standing tall, her voice resonating far beyond what either of them had ever imagined. As time passed, Daniel and Lily continued to grow together, their bond unshakable. Lily's advocacy work expanded, and she began mentoring younger children who faced similar challenges. She encouraged them to embrace their differences and to see themselves as valuable and capable. One of the children, a boy named Max, was particularly shy. He had just started middle school and struggled with social anxiety, often sitting alone at lunch. Lily met him during one of her workshops and immediately saw herself in him. "Hi, Max," she said gently, sitting down beside him. "Can I see what you're drawing?" Max hesitated, then slid his sketchpad toward her. It was filled with intricate drawings of animals, each one more detailed than the last. "Wow," Lily said, genuinely impressed. "These are amazing. Have you ever thought about sharing them with other people?" Max shook his head. "No one cares about my drawings." "That's not true," Lily said firmly. "I care. And I think a lot of other people would too." She encouraged Max to bring his drawings to the next workshop, where he nervously displayed them for the group. To his surprise, the other kids were fascinated, asking him questions and praising his talent. For the first time, Max felt seen, and Lily knew she had made a difference. Years later, as Lily prepared to graduate from high school, Daniel found himself reflecting on everything they had been through. The girl who once dreaded stepping onto the bus was now a confident young woman with a bright future ahead of her. On the night of her graduation, Daniel sat in the audience, watching proudly as Lily walked across the stage to receive her diploma. When her name was called, the crowd erupted into applause, and Daniel stood, clapping until his hands hurt. After the ceremony, Lily found him in the crowd, her cap slightly askew and her diploma clutched tightly in her hands. "We did it," she said, throwing her arms around him. Daniel laughed, holding her close. "You did it, sweetheart. I just cheered you on." Lily pulled back, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Daddy." Daniel smiled, his heart full. "And I couldn't be prouder of the person you've become." As they drove home that night, Lily looked out the window, her mind filled with memories of their journey. "Do you think we'll ever write another book?" she asked. Daniel glanced at her, his smile soft. "If you want to, we will." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I think we should. But this time, I want it to be about everyone we've met, the kids, the parents, and all the people who've helped us along the way." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Daniel said. "Their stories deserve to be told." And so, their journey continued, fueled by the belief that kindness truly was magic, and that it had the power to change the world, one ripple at a time. The years passed like chapters in a book, each one bringing new challenges and victories for Daniel and Lily. Their bond, which had been forged in the fires of adversity, only grew stronger with time. What had once been a simple fight to protect Lily from a cruel bus driver had evolved into a lifelong mission to spread kindness and understanding. Lily's second book, The Ripple of Kindness, had become a national bestseller, but what mattered most to her was the way it touched people's lives. Teachers sent letters, sharing how their students had started kindness initiatives inspired by her story. Parents wrote emails about how the book helped their children open up about bullying or feeling different. Lily read every single one, often with tears in her eyes. One letter stood out among the rest. It was from a mother in a small town who had a son named Ethan, a boy with autism who struggled to find his place at school. She wrote about how Lily's book had given him hope and helped him find the courage to share his love of music with his classmates. As Lily read the letter aloud to Daniel, she paused, her voice trembling. "Daddy, do you think we could visit them? I want to meet Ethan." Daniel smiled. "Of course we can. Let's make it happen." A few weeks later, they found themselves driving through rolling hills and quiet neighborhoods to visit Ethan and his family. When they arrived, they were greeted warmly by Ethan's mother, Sarah, who looked at Lily with a mixture of gratitude and awe. "You have no idea how much your story has meant to us," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Ethan's been counting down the days to meet you." When Ethan shyly entered the room, clutching a small keyboard, Lily knelt to his level, her voice soft and encouraging. "Hi, Ethan. Is that your keyboard? Do you like to play music?" Ethan nodded, his eyes lighting up. "I like to play songs I make up. Do you want to hear one?" "I'd love to," Lily said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Ethan began to play, his fingers moving gracefully over the keys. The melody was simple but beautiful, filled with a raw emotion that took Lily's breath away. When he finished, she clapped enthusiastically. "That was amazing, Ethan," she said. "You're so talented." Ethan beamed, and for the first time, he began to talk about his passion for music, how it helped him express emotions he couldn't put into words, how it made him feel free. His mother watched with tears in her eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the moment. As they left later that day, Lily turned to Daniel. "Do you think we could help Ethan share his music with more people?" Daniel nodded, already thinking of ways to make it happen. "We'll figure it out." Back home, Lily and Daniel brainstormed ways to help Ethan and other kids like him. That's when the idea struck. They could create a program that celebrated the unique talents of children with disabilities, giving them a platform to shine. They called it the Shine Project, and it quickly became one of the most meaningful endeavors of their lives. The project organized talent showcases where children could share their passions, whether it was music, art, writing, or anything else that made them unique. The events were joyous celebrations, filled with laughter, applause, and the kind of pure, unfiltered pride that only children could inspire. Ethan was one of the first participants, performing his original music in front of a crowd for the first time. As the audience gave him a standing ovation, he grinned from ear to ear, his confidence soaring. Lily watched from the sidelines, her heart bursting with pride. "Daddy," she whispered to Daniel, "this is what I want to do forever. Help kids feel like this?" Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're already doing it, sweetheart. And you're changing lives." As the Shine Project grew, Lily and Daniel traveled to more towns and cities, meeting children and families whose stories mirrored their own in so many ways. Each encounter reinforced their belief in the power of kindness and the importance of standing up for those who couldn't always stand up for themselves. One particularly memorable event took place at a large high school, where a boy named Carlos performed a spoken word piece about his struggles with bullying and self-acceptance. His words were raw and powerful, leaving the audience in tears. Afterward, he approached Lily, his voice trembling. "Thank you for making this possible," Carlos said. "I didn't think anyone would ever listen to me. But today they did." Lily hugged him, her own eyes misty. "You have a voice, Carlos. And it's powerful. Never stop using it." Over time, Lily became more than an advocate. She became a mentor. Children from all over reached out to her, seeking advice and encouragement. She always made time for them, whether it was through emails, video calls, or in-person meetings. She believed in the ripple effect of kindness, knowing that each life she touched could go on to touch countless others. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to be her greatest supporter. He managed the logistics of their events, helped coordinate with schools and organizations, and always made sure Lily had the space to shine. Though he often stayed in the background, he knew his role was just as important as hers. "None of this would have happened without you," Lily told him one evening as they prepared for another event. "You were the first person to believe in me, and I'll never stop," Daniel said, his voice filled with conviction. "You've always been extraordinary, Lily. I just helped you see it." As the years went on, Lily's work began to reach international audiences. She was invited to speak at global conferences, where she shared her story and her vision for a kinder world. Despite the accolades and recognition, she remained humble, always emphasizing the collective effort behind her success. During one of her speeches, she said, "Kindness isn't about one person making a difference, it's about all of us, together. Every small act of compassion adds up, creating ripples that spread farther than we can imagine." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring people from all walks of life to embrace the idea of creating their own ripples of kindness. One day, as Daniel sat on the porch, now graying but no less proud of his daughter, Lily joined him, carrying a scrapbook filled with memories of their journey. She opened it to a page featuring a photo of her first poem, surrounded by drawings from children who had been part of the Shine Project. "Do you ever think about where we started?" she asked, her voice soft. "All the time," Daniel said. "It started with one bus ride, one moment of standing up for what was right. And look where it's led." Lily nodded, her eyes misty. "It's amazing how something so small can grow into something so big." "That's the power of kindness," Daniel said, his voice filled with pride. "It doesn't just change the world, it changes us, Lily leaned against him, her heart full. "Thank you for everything, Daddy. For fighting for me, believing in me, and showing me what kindness really means." Daniel smiled, his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you for being you, Lily. You've always been my greatest inspiration." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of gold and pink, father and daughter sat in peaceful silence, knowing their journey was far from over. Together, they had built something extraordinary, something that would continue to ripple through the world for generations to come. And in the end, that was their greatest legacy.